While the South China Sea keeps getting louder and more crowded, Manila just answered with steel, sensors, and serious intent. This is not business as usual, a Philippine defense official said after the latest signing, and they weren't exaggerating. So here's the real question that makes everyone sit up. When a middle power quietly drops over $500 million on new warships, what exactly are they preparing for? Just days before the end of 2025, as most of the world was winding down for the holidays, the Philippines made a move that barely made noise globally, but echoed loudly across Asia's naval circles. Manila signed a $550 million plus contract with South Korea's HD Hyundai Heavy Industries to build 2 additional Miguel Malvar-class guided missile frigates, sleek, modern warships designed not for parades, but for contested waters. No speeches, no theatrics. Just a contract, a pen, and a very clear message. The Philippine Navy is done being undergunned. To understand why this matters, think back a decade. The Philippine Navy once relied on World War II-era ships and hand-me-down platforms, vessels better suited for training than deterrence. Today, that image is history. These new frigates are not symbolic upgrades. They are frontline combatants equipped for air defense, anti-surface warfare, and networked operations. In plain terms, they allow the Navy to stay on station longer, see farther, and respond faster in waters where hesitation invites pressure. The timing is everything. The South China Sea has become a daily stress test for Philippine sovereignty, from close-range encounters to gray zone coercion. China's expanding presence has forced Manila to confront an uncomfortable truth. Diplomacy without credible naval power has limits. These frigates are that missing muscle. They don't escalate tensions, but they change the calculus, making it clear that Philippine patrols are no longer soft targets. There's also a bigger story hiding beneath the headlines. By doubling down on South Korean shipbuilders, the Philippines is following a path already proven by regional players like Indonesia and Thailand. Countries that modernize their fleets steadily, platform by platform, rather than chasing flashy one-off purchases. It's old-school strategy, honestly. Build slowly, build reliably, and build ships that sailors can actually sustain in wartime. Bottom line? This isn't just about 2 warships. It's about a Navy that has learned from its past, read the room in the Indo-Pacific, and decided that credibility at sea is no longer optional. The Philippines didn't shout this move, it signed it. And in geopolitics, that's often when the most serious shifts begin. For decades, the Philippine Navy lived with a hard reality that rarely made headlines. It was a force built more for presence than power. Much of the fleet consisted of aging donated ships, former Coast Guard cutters, and lightly armed patrol craft, useful for constabulary duties, disaster response, and flag showing, but fundamentally limited once operations stretched beyond coastal waters. Blue water combat, the ability to deploy, fight, and sustain operations far from home ports, remained more aspiration than capability. That picture only began to change in the early 2020s. The arrival of the Jose Rizal-class frigates in 2020 to 2021 marked a turning point, giving the Navy its first genuinely modern surface combatants with guided missiles, sensors, and command systems fit for regional operations. Still, those ships were a beginning, not an endpoint. The subsequent induction of the Miguel Malvar-class frigates pushed the Navy further up the capability ladder, introducing more advanced combat systems, improved survivability, and better integration with allied and joint forces. In practical terms, these vessels signaled that the Philippine Navy was no longer confined to coastal defense. It was learning how to operate in contested, open ocean environments. This transformation did not happen in isolation. It sits squarely within the Armed Forces of the Philippines' Modernization program, a long-running, often uneven effort to move the country's military away from Cold War-era platforms and toward forces that can operate across air, sea, land, cyber, and information domains. For the Navy, modernization has meant prioritizing fewer but far more capable ships, accepting that quality and endurance matter more than raw hull numbers in today's maritime security environment. Seen in this context, the recent frigate orders are not a sudden splurge or a reactionary purchase. They are the continuation of a deliberate shift, from a Navy once dependent on second-hand assets to one steadily building a core of modern, interoperable warships. It's a classic, almost traditional approach to force building, Slow, expensive, and disciplined, but ultimately the only way a maritime nation can protect its interests in an increasingly unforgiving sea. This is where the headline money meets hard capability, and the numbers tell a story Manila wants its neighbors to read carefully. The Frigate Acquisition Project, Full Complement Phase 2, is not a token upgrade or a placeholder deal. Valued at around $550 million, the contract was signed with HD Hyundai Heavy Industries in late December 2025, locking in the construction of 2 additional Miguel Malvar-class guided missile frigates. At this price point, the Philippines isn't buying hulls for show. It's buying combat power designed to last decades. Both ships fall into the 3,200-ton class, a sweet spot for modern frigates, large enough to carry serious sensors and weapons, yet compact enough to operate efficiently across the archipelago and into the wider Western Pacific. Built by South Korea's most experienced naval shipbuilder, these frigates draw directly from HD HHI's HDF 3200 design, a platform already proven in export markets. That matters because reliability and sustainment, not just raw firepower, are what separate paper navies from real ones. As for timing, Manila is playing the long game. The contract was officially signed on December 26, 2025, with an expected delivery window by 2029. That timeline reflects disciplined procurement rather than urgency-driven shortcuts. These ships are being built not just for today's tensions, but for the strategic environment of the 2030s, a period where maritime power in Southeast Asia will matter more than ever. In short, this order isn't flashy, and that's precisely the point. It's measured, methodical, and unmistakably serious. 2 more frigates, yes, but more importantly, 2 more pieces in a navy that is finally being built for the world it actually operates in, not the one it used to hope for. This is where the purchase stops being about ships and starts being about strategy. On paper, the Miguel Malvar-class frigates are steel, sensors, and missiles. In reality, they are tools for changing behavior at sea, both adversary and allied. For a navy that once struggled to maintain persistent presence beyond its coastlines, these vessels fundamentally reset what the Philippines can credibly do in its own waters. First, the impact on maritime defense is immediate and tangible. With the endurance and combat systems these frigates bring, the Philippine Navy can patrol deeper into its exclusive economic zone and the contested West Philippine Sea without relying on luck or escorts. These ships are not just observers, they are deterrent assets, capable of responding across the full spectrum, from air threats to surface combatants to submarines. As Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad previously emphasized when earlier frigates entered service, they add to the capital ships, capable of patrolling up to our EEZ and beyond. That single phrase, "and beyond," captures the strategic shift: presence without vulnerability. The regional context makes this expansion unavoidable rather than optional. Near flashpoints such as Scarborough Shoal, Chinese maritime and Coast Guard vessels have normalized close-in operations, probing reactions and testing limits. In this environment, lightly armed patrol ships invite pressure. Modern frigates complicate it. They don't escalate encounters, but they raise the cost of coercion, forcing any opposing force to factor in air defense radars, anti-ship missiles, and ASW coverage before acting aggressively. There's also a quieter, more diplomatic signal embedded in the order. By deepening defense ties with South Korea, Manila is reinforcing a networked security posture rather than a single ally dependence. Seoul's growing role as a supplier of advanced naval platforms reflects a shared strategic outlook, one that values reliability, interoperability, and long-term sustainment over headline-grabbing hardware. For the Philippines, this partnership strengthens resilience. For South Korea, it cements its position as a serious Indo-Pacific defense exporter. These frigates do more than fill gaps in the fleet. They anchor Philippine claims with capability, reassure partners that Manila is investing in its own defense, and quietly remind Beijing that the era of uncontested pressure is narrowing. No dramatic speeches required, just ships that can stay, see, and, if necessary, fight. Zoom out from Manila for a second, and the bigger picture snaps into focus. Across Southeast Asia, navies are rearming, not for prestige, but for survival in an increasingly crowded maritime neighborhood. Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia have all pushed ahead with frigates, submarines, and maritime patrol assets, quietly accepting the same reality. The South China Sea is no longer permissive space. Against this backdrop, the Philippines' frigate expansion isn't an outlier, it's overdue alignment with regional trends. Even so, the imbalance is stark. Chinese surface combatants routinely outnumber ASEAN navies operating in disputed waters, and they do so with layers of air cover, long-range sensors, and logistical depth. Beijing's advantage isn't just numbers, it's persistence. The ability to rotate ships continuously keeps pressure constant, wearing down smaller fleets through sheer presence. For years, the Philippine Navy had little choice but to absorb that pressure with limited means. This is where the new Miguel Malvar-class frigates matter most. They close the most dangerous gaps. Improved air defense reduces vulnerability to aircraft and drones. Anti-submarine warfare capability counters a domain where smaller navies often lag. Greater endurance and modern sensors allow these ships to stay on station longer and operate with better situational awareness than legacy platforms ever could. In short, they don't match China ship for ship, but they ensure Philippine vessels are no longer operating blind or exposed. Still, realism matters. Even with these additions, the Philippine fleet remains smaller and less heavily armed than China's Navy, and likely will for the foreseeable future. Analysts are blunt about this. Frigates alone don't win long-term maritime competitions. Sustained modernization, more surface combatants, improved ISR, undersea capabilities, and tighter integration with allies is the only viable path forward. That's the quiet takeaway from this comparison. The Philippines isn't chasing parity, it's chasing credibility. And in today's regional naval balance, credibility, the ability to impose costs and stay present, is often enough to change behavior. These frigates don't end the asymmetry, but they finally ensure Manila is playing the game with the right pieces on the board. Behind the missiles and radar arrays, there's a quieter story here, one about money, priorities, and industrial ambition. A $550 million frigate deal isn't pocket change for any middle-income country, and in the Philippine context, it signals something important. Defense spending is no longer being treated as a discretionary extra, but as core national infrastructure. This contract fits squarely within the AFP Modernization program, which is structured to spread costs over multiple years, precisely so big-ticket capabilities like warships don't crowd out everyday military readiness. In other words, this isn't a budget shock, it's a planned investment. That matters politically. Large naval acquisitions tend to attract scrutiny, but framing them under long-term modernization allows Manila to justify the expense as protection of trade routes, fisheries, and energy resources, not just military hardware. In a country where maritime security is directly tied to economic survival, frigates become less about war and more about guarding the nation's future earnings. Industrially, the impact is more indirect, but no less strategic. Yes, the ships themselves are being built in South Korea, reflecting the reality that advanced frigate construction demands mature shipyards and specialized supply chains. But that doesn't mean the Philippines is standing still. Parallel efforts are underway to strengthen local shipbuilding, repair, and maintenance capacity, ensuring these vessels can be sustained at home over their service life. Maintenance, refits, and systems support are where real long-term value is captured and where domestic industry can grow. Over time, this approach follows a familiar, almost traditional model. Buy complex platforms from experienced builders first, then gradually localize support, upgrades, and eventually construction of less complex hulls. It's how several regional navies, including South Korea itself decades ago, built their maritime industries from the ground up. The frigate deal, then, isn't just a defense purchase. It's a stepping stone toward industrial confidence at sea, one contract at a time. Crew training and logistics remain the first real test of this modernization push. Advanced combat management systems and precision weapons don't run themselves. They demand skilled crews, technicians, and commanders who can operate and maintain them under pressure. That means long-term investment in training pipelines, overseas courses, and doctrine, not just one-time spending when the ships arrive. Operational readiness is the next hurdle. Modern frigates are expensive to keep at sea, and maintenance, upgrades, and life cycle costs can quietly strain the defense budget over time. The strategic value of these ships depends on availability. A frigate tied up in port too often weakens deterrence just as much as not having it at all. Defense analysts broadly view this order as part of a wider regional trend. Across Southeast Asia, militaries are shifting away from lightly armed patrol vessels toward robust, multi-role surface combatants that can operate in contested environments. The Philippines' frigate expansion fits squarely into this pattern, reflecting a maritime security now requires credible combat capability, not just presence. The $550 million frigate order marks a defining moment in the Philippines' naval modernization journey. By extending patrol reach, strengthening deterrence, and adding true multi-role combat power, these warships will shape Manila's maritime defense posture well into the 2030s. Even as regional tensions persist and capability gaps remain, the direction is clear. The Philippine Navy is no longer standing still. It is steadily building the tools it needs to defend its waters in a far more demanding strategic environment. If you found this analysis valuable, share your perspective in the comments. Your insights help deepen the conversation and sharpen our understanding of evolving regional dynamics. Thank you, and we will see you soon in our next geopolitical discussion.